Hi, I'm John Paul and a really warm welcome back to my channel. Today I'm just going to be talking about a couple of things about managing the transition from current career to therapist. The two things which I would most often get asked about would be the course, and one of the reasons for that is the length of qualification that would be necessary in order to become a therapist, because there are a number of different options, as we will all know if you've been looking into it. And so what people would be saying is that they're often trying to, completely understandably, look at the quickest route to become a therapist so that they can begin their private practice if that's what somebody has in mind. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and I also want to talk about the financial transition, because that's the other thing that most often comes up. Somebody has X income and from private practice they want to get to Y income, and how do you do that? So I want to say a few things about that as well. First thing, therefore, is looking at this transition as far as the course itself. As I say, often people might be trying to shorten the length of qualifications so that they can transition to being a therapist in private practice as quickly as possible. There are a few things that I would say about that. By the way, I hope this doesn't sound in any way sort of patronising or lecturing. I mean, these are things that I would have said to myself back at the beginning. You know, I did a psychotherapy qualification, I did a part-time 5-year course, and there were absolutely times during that where I thought, this is too long, or why is this taking so long? The thing that I would say about this, and again, as I say, it would be saying it to myself back then, I suppose, if I'm thinking, oh, I just want this to happen more quickly, is that it isn't just a change of a job title, in my case from lawyer to therapist. It is really quite a significant psychological shift from a particular place to another. You might say adding another psychological dimension or putting more energy into it, certainly. Values get turned on their head. I've talked about it in other videos as well. From my experience of myself, the world, what's important, what happens to emotions. From a start of lawyer to becoming therapist, it's a very significant change. You know, most often people who become therapists have had, like all human beings, some attachment difficulties, probably some trauma. There are lots of things to work through for people, and sometimes somebody might say to me, well, I could do that 5 years, or there is something which is a year full time, for example. And I think, well, I understand that somebody could do the theory in a year, but there is, as I say, a very much a significant change from one place to another in order to be able to sit with clients and establish and maintain therapeutic relationships, let alone running a business as well. In terms of summarising the whole experience, it would be, I would be learning to navigate all parts of myself and learn to navigate the external world and relationships with others from a very disorientating start in lots of ways. So that is a job that would not be done in a year, even with the best therapy. That would be a job, actually, that is not done in 5 years, that it's an ongoing process. Certainly things were good enough, and more than good enough, to sit and establish and maintain good therapeutic relationships with clients, but it is an ongoing process that, again, I can totally understand why people are wanting to do it, but trying to squeeze it into a much shorter period of time, I don't think is going to help you. Now, just as an aside on that, the length of time, the cost of courses is one of the most significant obstacles to people coming in, I think, very much socioeconomic factors that can keep people out of the profession, which I think is a problem. So I wish it was different, but I'm not sure that the thing to do is to shorten the training for people. Of course, if you're thinking of private practice, what's going to happen once you're qualified, you will have been marketing and advertising, and anybody could come in. I mean, that's the whole idea, isn't it? That you are open to the public, in inverted commas. So, and there is no supervisor in that room with you. There is no one else in that room with you other than those clients. So in order to navigate that process, in order to make sure you love this career, in order to make sure you don't burn out or have very difficult experiences which put you off doing it, and of course are distressing for you and potentially for that client, I think it's really important to have done as much as you can to make sure that you're in a place to do that. And I'm not trying to take away anyone's confidence here or make anybody doubt themselves, but I just think there are very good reasons why it can take a long time. Why, for example, it can take 5 years part-time in order to make this transition for someone. The thing is, when you're looking at that 5 years or 3 years or 4 years, whatever it is, there are some people that probably could start very soon. Learning some of the theory, they could very helpfully sit with people for a number of reasons. I would say sort of 3 factors potentially. Someone's environment that they grew up in, very well loved being, meant that communication is easy for them. They were modeled it. Boundaries works very well for them. They were shown how to do that, shown how to navigate both themselves and life in their environment. There are physiological reasons probably why some people, serotonin levels can be inherited, I understand. So there are probably physiological reasons why some people might find it easier than others to establish and maintain a good relationship with themselves and other people. And of course, there are also those people that will have spent potentially a lot of time earning that ability to do that outside of any therapy training. So 3 very significant factors which, whether we're going to be able to do this or not are dependent on, and I don't know where you are with them. But in terms of most people, in terms of what most of us have gone through in early experience, I think that's a process that's going to take time. So that's the changing psychological state of things. I think it's also important to bear in mind that if we've been working within an organisation and moving to a place where we're running our own business, that of itself is a very significant psychological shift as well. I've talked about it in other videos, being within this much larger container where other people might be making decisions, coming up with strategy. You're looking at being in private practice. It's just you. Of course, you can bring other people in there, but that it's a very different psychological place, I think. So again, if you're looking at changing from one place to the other, that can take time. So I think what I would say generally is I think it's important to lean into the process to the extent that you can. And just to say as well on this, there's making sure that you're going to love it and you're going to really enjoy it. There's the reason for making the change and going through all this, presumably. But it can be very difficult, I think, if that psychological shift is not there sufficiently. It can actually be a very difficult and a real roller coaster in terms of experience for someone. And I wouldn't want that for you. And I also think, when people are coming through, and again, I would say this to myself, a lot of people, if you're looking at attachment and trauma difficulties, a lot of potential clients, they didn't get what they needed to a degree during early experience, and they are giving relationship. This therapeutic relationship, potentially, they're giving people, a person, one more chance. Of course, people can go between all kinds of therapists and it can be a process and a journey. It's a really significant thing that someone's doing. And I'm saying this to myself. Well, I'm literally talking to myself here, but this is what I would say to myself when I was started. It's a very significant thing that people are coming up with that trust. They're taking that risk with a stranger coming round again in some ways to relationship in the belief that this is going to be different this time and they're going to get what they need and it's going to be helpful. So that's a very significant thing to honour, to make sure that we are in a place sufficiently when we qualify that we're going to be best placed to hopefully be able to facilitate that for someone. Of course, it's not always going to work out. Sometimes the mixture of the two people, maybe it happens for a period and then maybe someone will go on and do something else or go to another therapist, whatever it might be, or even go away and come back over time. I understand it's not always going to be, no matter how much work you've done and where you are, that you're going to be in a place where it's going to be able to do that for someone, whatever it is that they need. But something I've also would say to myself is sometimes we can't make it better through the therapeutic relationship, but I wouldn't want to make it worse. And I think if somebody has a bad, in inverted commas, experience with their therapist, with a therapist, that is very wounding for someone potentially, because therapists will understandably be given a different position often in people's psyche than other people. So I think it's also important to that. And again, look, this isn't, I hope, coming across in any way as patronising. I'm really saying a lot of this to myself and what I would have said to myself back in 2007 or 2008, whenever it was that I started. So the second thing, let's just talk about finances. The other big problem that a lot of people have, or the thing that might put them off or make them nervous, is bridging the gap between what they earn now and what they want to earn in private practice. A few things about that. I mean, more generally, of course, I don't know people's particular financial situation. I don't know your financial situation, and it is different for everybody. So this number of what it might be that you want to go to through private practice or that you need, I don't know what that's going to be for you. People have other people in their households potentially earning income. They have other sources of income, possibly. They might have dependents or not, or mortgages or not, whatever it is. So I don't know what that number is for you, but I would say what the most important thing is to, you clearly know what you earn at the moment, what is it, the number that you would need in life or want in life so that you can enjoy the things that you enjoy, take care of responsibilities, and make sure that money, I suppose, would not be something that would mean that you would resent the career. So what would that number be? And then there is, of course, bridging that gap for someone. And from that point of view, a few things. The first one is that I would see it more for most people as a ramp to that place, a gradual ramp rather than a steep drop off. Perhaps some people can afford a steep drop. They stop their income, they stop their job, requalify and start building their practice. But that's not most people, I don't think. I mean, that would be great if that's something that somebody could do, because of course, which I'm going to come on to in a minute, that would mean that you could get everything you needed done within that period in order to qualify on time, so to speak, and then of course get registered. But it isn't the reality for most people. For most people, it's looking, as I say, at that graduated change or that gradual change. So what can be within that for people? It's of course, going part-time, potentially more flexible working, for two reasons. So sustaining an income or some sort of income during that period, but also giving yourself time to fulfill your course requirements and also potentially start to build your private practice as well, if that's what you feel ready for. Like I said in previous videos, I was able to do that in the third year of my training, which meant that by the end of the fourth year, by the time I qualified, I had a practice. Not what it is now, but something which was very much bringing in an income and sort of building confidence as well. So graduating off your current career, if that's possible, and also from the point of view of the other end, I suppose, the amount that you want on qualification. Some people may stop work in their previous place and they could, as well as building a private practice, take a part-time job as well to give themselves an income. So, part-time working, flexible working, looking at these possibilities, building up a financial buffer as well. I was talking to Maria Parker. I'll put a link to her conversation. She was talking about some of her friends on her course taking 3 or 6 months off in order to complete the course requirements and build their private practice as well. Again, it's not possible for everybody, probably for very few people, to be able to not have an income for that period. But if we're looking 5 years in advance, maybe it is possible for somebody to start building up that kind of buffer, because it's going to make things very stressful. And I don't think we particularly want to be anxious or feel unsafe financially during that period if we're looking at doing the course requirements and certainly looking at working for ourselves and building a practice. Fear, helpful fear and solving problems and identifying them is very helpful. The sort of unhelpful anxiety that can come from feeling financially unsafe is not going to be helpful from the point of view of building a practice. So, looking at those numbers, I don't think it has to be an overly complicated process. And of course, over the period of, say, 5 years, circumstances change, things might change, but I think it's calming for somebody to know this is where I am, this is where I want to be. So from that point of view, if you want to talk about that with me, I work with people that are doing that transition. Part of that is the financial side of things, and we can look at that together. Because the other thing that's really important to say is this number that you're going towards from your private practice, of course, people can earn all kinds of amounts as therapists. There are some people that might struggle to earn £15,000 a year doing it. Esther Perel, I look on ChatGPT for an online talk, she might earn between $150,000 and $200,000. So I don't know whether you're going to be Esther Perel or whether you're going to be someone else. So there's all kinds of factors that decide what your income, which are really very much personality dependent. I think, they are, of course, your environment and where things are economically in the world at the time, but they're also very much about your internal landscape. So the other thing that I would say here is that your mindset and looking at that is very important. Particularly, what happens around fear, how you might inhibit yourself in life and limit yourself. That's really important to look at. It will all be being looked at and taken care of to a degree during the training process and your therapy and supervision and starting to work with clients. But there's probably also things that can proactively be done to look at how you might inhibit yourself. How do you get to know who you are in terms of a therapist? How are you at taking risks? Do you contact people externally? Those sorts of things are really important for moving from one place to another. Again, just to emphasize that psychological shift. And it will be happening just by doing this process, just going through the process. And I also think there are things that can be done to help that, to really improve trust of self and improve trust of others, the kinds of things that are really going to help build a very successful private practice. And again, on that, we can do that together as well, if that's something that you're thinking of, particularly focusing on it in terms of business, in terms of putting yourself out there, all those kind of things. Just wanted to say a final thing, as far as I mentioned, Maria talking about people taking time off, say 3 months, 6 months, in order to complete their qualifications. It is important, I think, to qualify as soon as you can in some ways. I don't mean from the point of view of what I was talking about before, but to try and do this in 6 months. I mean that if you are doing a 5-year part-time course, to try and complete the course requirements so you qualify on time. Because looking at my experience, for example, I qualified in 2012, I think, from memory, in order to register with UKCP, I then had to practice for another 6 months. So, of course, if your qualification drifts because you don't have your hours, or you haven't finished your dissertation or case studies, that drifts 6 months, impetus might be lost, and then on qualification, you still have to see clients for another 6 months. It's pushing a number of important things out potentially. So if you're looking at being able to plant seeds to grow a private practice, so I'm sure you know, and I have mentioned in other videos, some of the things that can really help with that, at least initially, can be things like, certainly being on the directories, at some point in the future working for insurance companies, working for employee assistance programs, the mental health platforms. There are so many different ways to connect with people and to connect with clients, but they are dependent, a number of those things, on having your qualification for obvious reasons, and subsequently as well registration or accreditation. So those things are important. At the moment, there are people out there who are working without accreditation, registration, qualifications. And I would finish off talking generally, if you're looking at even the length of course, and also this issue of, the kind of finances of things, there is the scope of education coming. It's already here, actually. And that means that potentially, at some point, statutory regulation should be coming. And I think that will mean that people won't just be able to call themselves psychotherapists and start working with clients. And it will also limit, potentially, the jobs that people can apply for if they don't have particular qualifications. So the scope of education, I think, if you're looking at the transition, going back to that, and the length of time of the course, I think is also very, very important to bear in mind. We are where we are at the moment as far as who can call themselves a therapist and who can't. Well, basically anyone can. But my sense is, and there's obviously, it's happening with the scope of education, is I think that's going to be changing. I'm not professing to give any definitive information on this here. I do think it's something that you'll need to research yourself, because the position changes as well. But I would really bear that in mind in terms of a qualification as well, which of course has a knock-on effect on the finances and the money too, because of the length of qualification. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful. I hope none of this comes across as sort of lecturing on things or patronising. It's all things that I would have said to myself in 2007, 2008, and things that have come from that experience of being within the industry for this long. As ever, I would absolutely love to hear what you say. What is your experience? What do you think about the length of qualifications? Do you think things are too long? How are you managing things financially as well? You know, how are you making sure that this is a stress-less process as it can be, so that you can really enjoy both the process of training and really leaning into that, and also of course, when you set up your practice, really enjoying working with your clients. Let me know. I would love to hear from you. If you found it helpful, as ever, please do give it a like. If you think somebody else would find it helpful, please do share the video. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Thank you very much for watching. I shall be back again soon, and take care.